Good afternoon. How are you? Well, Thomas Jefferson is building up a nice sequence here. 44 degrees, pretty comfortable. The humidity is 36%, so that's dropped. And the wind's supposed to be at 7 miles an hour, although I don't feel it. The noise you hear below my feet, I'm still wearing cleats. There's still ice on the ground. The drop in temperature has to melt it, but if it leaves any water, then at night it freezes when it's 17 or 10 degrees. But you know all that. Today I was thinking about what example are we presenting, and is our laissez-faire view of people having an infinite number of children that they cannot take care of, can hardly sometimes take care of themselves, is a pro-life position? Because I think it's not. I think pro-life is family planning. And that includes abortion and the right of a woman to have dominion over herself. And yes, Roe v. Wade put periods of time in which this right over oneself, the right of privacy, the right to be let alone, had to be followed. So what anecdote triggers me to mention this? And the answer is, there's a 5-year-old in Michigan who greeted the person who came to the door with a carving knife. And so the person who was there to subpoena someone went away, but then came back. When they came back the second time, the 5-year-old was standing there with a loaded handgun. Then the police were called, and they came and disarmed the child and took away who appeared to be the parents. In a household of 5 children, and Child Protective Services is going to figure out the fate of these children. How we have decided that anything goes means that anything does go, and it goes badly. Whether it be the environment and the overpopulation and building and so forth, and the compromises from industry, what we breathe and what we can drink, right up there is this notion of, I can have a child. Well, yeah, I guess you can, but you should be an adult, and if you're not an adult, you shouldn't have a child. And if you don't care to take protection or to follow the rules and so forth, you're putting a burden on your neighbors and everyone else. But of those who are enlightened, who are having difficulty planning because we have a government that has a religious view that a fecundated ovum is a person, well, that's bizarre, and religion is supposed to be separate, but it's increasingly not, and we're paying for that as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. The immigration is another example of this. How much do you think should be spent of the American taxpayer dollar on going to schools and shops without any knowledge who's there, without a warrant, and conducting a dragnet and taking people away, telling everybody they're arrested because they fit a certain profile, but having no process by which to confirm this, and they're put on C-130s and they're taken to Guatemala or someplace in South America. Okay, so let's look at the stats. So far, Felon Trump has arrested 1,000 migrants. 1,000. Okay. So at that rate, I don't know, a couple of days, 3 days, 4 days, how long will it take to have 999,000 more so we can get around a million? A million. How much money should we spend on that? How much does a C-130 cost to lubricate, get up in the air, and travel to South America? How many have been arrested who are wrongly arrested? How many places in Illinois and Chicago and California, Texas, Georgia, Puerto Rico, Colorado, and the Virgin Islands. How many people have been arrested in those places? And what process did they receive afterwards? Now, you may think if a person's an alien, they don't have any rights, the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment. But they do. And the Supreme Court had decided that, at least one Supreme Court did. So, is this a push to normalize for us the brutality of a brute force government that just does whatever the hell it wants? Because that's what's going on now. And it's hard to believe that no one has managed to get this into court. No one has sought a protective order, a stay against a policy that violates our Constitution and the individual rights which are recognized for, quote, aliens. See, we're better than all of that. So how do we go off the rails? What happened? There's an author, historian, who I've thought of very highly since I was a youngster, and I read what he had to say about a variety of issues. And I think his first prize was for The Age of Jackson, Andrew Jackson. And it focuses on his biography and his political life, but not what he did with the Indians. He was talking about Arthur Schlesinger was talking about the changes in America. And I managed to get to work in politics with Arthur because we organized for Ted Kennedy's campaign in New York. And he was always available, and he always said brilliant things. And we ran together as a slate to go to the convention in 1980 in New York. But Arthur Schlesinger was concerned about who has the power, and is it fair, and how do we get to where we are? Now, the early Federalists, their dominance was born of business. The path they took was industry, not agrarian. And how did we manage to compete? Tariffs was one of those ways. So the early Federalists believed that since they were better than everyone else, and this is no exaggeration, you can quote a variety of people in the early Federalists, including Hamilton, for this proposition. So what the value of the tariffs was it was to keep out business and really to protect our business to grow as an industry, although the prices would be higher to our citizens. So we cut out foreign nations, or diminished their effect on our economy, and gave our own businesses a chance. And who picked up the tab? Well, the equivalent of you and I many years ago. Now, you and I many years ago, if we didn't have property, we didn't get to vote. But over time, that changed. And the franchise changed things, because it was believed that those who had the franchise but who didn't have property were less equal or unequal. And the fact that they worked all day at some industry or other didn't entitle them to be treated as well as the wealthy. Now, the simple formula that they believed was that if you have property, you can have power. If you have power, you can have property. You can interchange property and wealth, but you get to the same place. And America has now seen this in red, white, and blue. At the inauguration of felon Trump, we had an accumulation of the richest men in the world. Real property, real power, real power, real wealth. And Trump is an example of that himself. Just days before taking office, he managed to spin a position and an investment in such a way as to become, I don't know, I think a $6 billion plutocrat, just like everybody else. So a tariff keeps out less expensive goods, and they may dress it up in various ways. Who's the beneficiary of the tariff? Well, it's not the foreign government, right? And it's not the people. So it's the businesses who, but for the tariff, wouldn't be able to compete. So a tariff favors the rich, not you and I. So we have expensive goods at home because of that. But over time, as Arthur Schlesinger and other historians have pointed out, this formula broke down. The franchise actually broke down the power. Because when more people could vote, they were going to exercise their will to be treated equally and justly and to have individual rights and liberties that were stated in the amendments to the Constitution. But they thought they could control that. And they controlled it in two ways: unmistakable and present in great power now. One is the courts. Originally, Hamilton thought the courts were the weakest of the three branches. But over time, with John Marshall, they became much stronger and could protect and did protect the wealthy. Now, there have been exceptions to it, but overall, the courts protect your contract, protect your business, stop cases against you if you're the wealthy. And, you know, the oft-spoken phrase that no man is above the law, it's always been a lie. Always. The wealthy are above the law. They write the law. They are the law. They are the power. And they go around denying that, when in fact, in truth, that's exactly who and what they are. But the courts weren't enough. So another element of the Federalist argument is religion. Religion allows them, the wealthy, the powerful, to amass the strength. Now, when the other day Trump was asked to be merciful, oh, wow, that's not on the game card. That's not something you say to one of the wealthy class, the business class, the plutocrats. She had the nerve to actually invoke the true sentiment of the Bible, the Sermon on the Mount. She asked him to be merciful. And he turned on her and on the church and on her teaching and on her respectful request like she'd hit him with a 2x4 in the head. Could anything stir his mind, felon Trump's, to care about other people? I don't think so. And yet we wander around. It's like we're trying to fool everybody else by pretending, you know, we can just talk to these guys and it'll all change. No, that is not the power curve. That's a nice thing, but it lulls us into inaction. It blunts our message. It compromises our ability to at least adjust the imbalance if that's possible. So, we have our work cut out for us, and the people in the government, elected officials, they understand the power curves, and they've taken advantage of it, and many of them, that's why they're in office. Now in AOC, different story, but in the lower house, in Congress, still, she's been faithful, but she doesn't talk this message. And this message is the political reality. And so we believed when we were younger, and forgive me because some of you are younger than this story, is we believed when I was a kid, if you turned 30, that was it, your life was over. Because we didn't trust anybody over 30. And the older I get, the more sense that makes. This doesn't happen magically at 30, but the die is cast by some of the initial steps you take in a lifetime. Now, if you want one other arrow for your quiver on the question of tariffs, read anything you want about McKinley, because that's what McKinley was big on. But you know, I suppose he really believed what he was doing. But in the end, the tariffs were one of his biggest problems in staying in office and leading the nation. He did a lot of good things. And McKinley, and I hope this doesn't slander the memory of McKinley, Trump favors himself as an adherent of the kind of presidency that McKinley had. Well, Trump thinks of himself as a combination of past presidents without the character, the wisdom, the judgment, the good-hearted nature, the courage to do what's right. He just wants the power. He'll do anything he can to get it. So he sees himself, I'll do what Teddy Roosevelt did. I'll handle the Panama Canal. I'll go over to Greenland and I'll take what we need in water and territory. And I'll go other places. I'll lean on Mexico. And I understand that a South American country, I think maybe it was Guatemala, said that they would not allow Trump's C-130 to land. And he apparently leaned on them, talking about tariffs that he would put on their goods coming into America. So you get the picture. We're dealing with a thug. And if we don't start dealing with him as a thug, he'll just run away with the House. And that's what he's trying. And I'm not talking about the House of Representatives or the Senate. I'm talking about the whole nation. So we have to wake up. Somebody said I thought this was behind us. And I believe this person was more advanced in years than I. And I said, well, what else are you going to do with the rest of your life? You know, fight the good fight. And live as good a life as you can, encumbered by these assholes. So that's what I got to say on my walk on this road, and I hope tomorrow to be amidst my trees. All the best. Bye-bye.